Still to have back here on the Rich Eisen Show, entering his 6th season as the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, Dan Quinn, back here on the show. How are you, Coach?
Rich, I'm doing good, man. I always enjoy being on the show with you, so glad to be on.
Always appreciate being with you. What in the world is it like coaching these days, Dan?
Well, number one, it's awesome.
Okay.
to be back on the field and, coaching and being involved with the players. Like, that part, feels exactly like you hope, with the exception of, a mask at practice. And so, communicating, on the field, there's, definitely some nonverbal, sign language that you're having to go through, because on the field you don't get to communicate quite as loudly as you normally do. But being back with the team, and I've been really impressed by these guys, just the way they came in, the mindset to go after it. So it's been good, man, to get back into it. The inside the building,
yes,
Rich, is probably the biggest adjustments, not on the field, but the preparation to go play ball. And I think these guys are showing they're earning the right to play by doing the right things, making the right choices. We're continuing as an NFL to small percentage of positive tests. So it takes a lot of work and take a lot of discipline by everybody. But I think we're all showing like we're all committed to getting it done. And we all want to be a part of it so damn bad that we're, want to say this is how we got to go to play ball and get it right, and then we're down for it.
Yeah, in a normal year, Coach, you'd be talking about trimming your roster down and having a final preseason game coming up next week, yep. Getting ready for the, if you will, dress rehearsal, third preseason week. And then the final week, as I mentioned, next week would be for people trying to make that 53-man roster. How do you make these evaluations currently?
Yeah, you're right. I think what us, and I'm sure other coaches as well, you try to create some mock games just to make as much game-like environment as you can, Rich. There's nothing that will, replace that, but at least you can, create some spaces and some moments to do that in drill work and at practice. All right, coaches on the sideline, and then just seeing if you can almost set up some moments to see some matchups that you'd like to see, this receiver and this DB, this defensive end and the tackle, to see them really at their best and the things that we need to find out about. What roles for players, a lot of that comes, in times for the preseason games, especially for the newest players, to say, okay, what unique stuff can this guy bring to the team? And then the player that's going from year one to year two, those are the guys that usually make the biggest jump. So you can't just assume what he was last year is what he's going to be this year. I think the guy going from year one to year two usually takes the biggest jump. And I think you have to recognize it and see it and say, okay, this is still the process that's taken place. And I think we have a number of those players as well.
What about your current rookies who we're looking at on the screen right now? If you're not by television. Yeah. What about these guys?
I thought overall, I thought the rookie class came in with a really good understanding and concept, kind of like, taking a semester online, and then could they learn it? And, you'd say, well, anybody can learn the playbook, Dan. Now it's the part of the timing, the accuracy, the decision-making, how quickly they can go. And so they had a very good understanding, more so than most rookies, of the concepts, the playbook. So there's very few mental errors taking place. Now it's a matter of the speed, and can you make full-speed decisions, when the player cuts right in front of you. Those are the things that you're seeing on a daily basis, and we just try to make as much of the evaluations as you can. And for the rookies specifically, don't try to play perfect. Right now, try to play fast, because you don't want to show, hesitancy in your game. And so can they show they can play fast? Because the mistakes, those are things we can coach our way through. But you want to make sure a player doesn't take on too much, Rich, because that can slow a young guy down where they're just uncertain and not really letting it rip.
Dan Quinn here on the Rich Eisen Show, and what I'm about to ask you is goes for whether you're coaching in a pandemic or not. One of the, I guess, tightropes that somebody in your position has to walk quite a bit, Dan Quinn, is that when you talk about players that have just popped free as a free agent, people might take that to mean you're not pleased with your current roster, or you are in being complimentary about somebody else potentially denigrating who you currently have on the roster. But that said, all of us in the media are dot connectors. We like connecting dots. And with Earl Thomas being a free agent and you being the DC of the Legion of Boom when it was legioning and booming and coming together, a lot of people have connected those dots. So what do you say about the possibility of reuniting with Earl Thomas, Coach?
Yeah, well, I think two things. One, I'd say one of my favorite all-time competitors. And I can remember all the way back, I was at his pro day coming out of the University of Texas, and this was the player, he wanted to, I think at the combine it was, over 4.3. He wanted it lower. So, like, most people no, I'll stand on my combine numbers. Nope, went after it again. He wanted to lower it to, wanted to be in the 4.2s or 4.3s, whatever it was. I can't remember the number, but I remember him going for it again. And so I had the chance to be around him as a rookie, and the practice habits, the effort, the competition. And then I left for 2 years and then came back to Seattle and to see him grow into that role. So definitely one of my all-time favorite competitors. I'd say the position on our team is one that we've got, it's one of strength for us at safety with Keanu and Ricardo and DeMonte KZ. So it's not a spot that we're looking to address, but he'll always have a spot, with me in terms of, the effort, the competitor. I'd absolutely love the guy. But as far as joining our team, we're squared away where we're at safety due to the players that we have there today.
Yeah, I hear you on that front. And in terms of, Earl, as you mentioned, being one of the best competitors and one of the best at the position and with a Hall of Fame credential, again, I know it's not your team, it's somebody else's team. But the reports that my colleague Mike Silver saying that Earl, part of the reason why he wore out his welcome was that he told coaching staff that he needed time to wash his car in between practice and meetings. How does that compute when you hear? And again, I'm not denigrating my colleague. Mike Silver gets his information right. It's just I don't know how to compute with Earl Thomas with what's going on.
Well, I would
there,
say
Dan.
I can only speak to my experience, and this player showed up to walk through with cleats on and a mouthpiece every day, so he could put himself in the moment. And so if that isn't locked in, I don't know what is. So he was he had the rare ability, Rich, to stay focused for a really long time. Oftentimes on a Friday afternoon, I'd be walking out and there you'd hear music coming from the DB meeting room. And I knew who it was because it was his last checklist of going through things on a Friday afternoon when most of the building had left. And I'd just pop in. I'd say, man, is there any questions that are coming up in your mind? And, if he did, we'd talk about them. But those were just two small examples of like how locked in a person can be on the moment. He had the rare ability just to keep a focus for a really long time, which is not easy for not just the ball player, but for anybody.
Yeah, I remember that 2010 draft, Coach, where, again, Pete Carroll just come from USC, and we all knew that they needed, Seattle needed to take a safety. Everybody assumed it would be Taylor Mays because
Right.
Pete would know him, and he would just won with him. And no, it's Earl Thomas from Texas, and it kind of threw everyone for a loop. But we all saw what happened after that first draft choice of the Carroll Schneider era in Seattle.
Yes,
Was Earl Thomas.
with Chancellor and Thomas and the same draft, the competitiveness of what it stood for, and certainly at secondary, like Pete had a remarkable role for what they would do right away. But Earl came in as one of the best practicing players right off the bat, the speed, the intensity, and I think probably during my time through the NFL, two players stood out to me. I had a defensive background, you know that, but I would say in San Francisco it would have been Bryant Young, and in Miami, Junior Seau. And so Earl came to Seattle with some of those traits of a guy who just would go for it. And I just remember sending some tape to one of my friends who was in college to say, you want to know how, like they were asking about practice tempo, and I sent tape of Earl to say, this is what it should look like.
Dan Quinn here on the Rich Eisen Show. I guess while we're strolling down memory lane a little bit here and just preparing for this, I just went down your history, and you were the D-line coach. I guess your first gig as a coach in 1994 at William and Mary. Was Mike Tomlin on that team when you were coaching?
Mike was a senior wide receiver, yes. So we were just a year apart, and that's where our connection began.
Wow.
So it was a lot of fun. And Sean McDermott was a sophomore safety on that team.
Come on. Really?
Come on, man. Yeah.
Were they coachable? Or you really needed to prod them a little bit?
No, they were 100% coachable. And so Mike and I, he was, a captain on that team. And the year after, I had gone to VMI. Mm-hmm. And that spring, when Mike was graduating, we needed a receiver coach. And I remember telling Bill Stewart, I said, well, Mike Tomlin wants to coach. He said, the receiver at William Mary? I said, yeah. It took him about he interviewed the next day and had the job in about 15 minutes. Like Mike was coaching, while he was still playing. Like he had that kind of connection with people. And so, like I said, I was just a year apart from him. So it wasn't the normal coach-player relationship. If there was time to go out and have a beer together, we did that a few times.
I bet. And then I just love the story of Mooch was the one who called you when you were in Hofstra and to give you a job or offer you a job of quality control on defense for the Niners and insisted you put your wife on the phone too, right? That's how he...
Yeah, he's such a stud, and it was like the best runway for someone to go into pro ball. Like think about learning something from Mooch. And so staff meetings, team meetings, like I got to see what it could look like. And so for, 2 years with him, I just got to see a model of what something done really remarkably well could look like. And I thought, what an excellent way to enter into the NFL. And it formed a lot of, the standards that I have today were, based on the things that Steve did, as a coach way back.
Dan Quinn here on the Rich Eisen Show. How is Matt Ryan? We haven't spoken to the Mattrel. Well, I'm not going to give up on just yet.
It's got to come back to ice eventually for you.
I know that. I know that. So how does, and we'll get him on soon. I'll ask him directly. But from your perspective, the fact that Brady's now in this division, Breeze, I mean, the nonstop conversation we're hearing about that, how does he take that? I imagine this is a challenge for somebody deep in his career with a resume like he's already put up for this franchise.
Yeah, and I would think for those that know him, the dog competitor that he is, he went after it in the offseason, and so when we got to training camp, you can see the work that he put in with Julio and Hayden and Calvin Ridley and Russell Gage, and so they spent time together here in Georgia, out in California. They took a break, went out there to throw some. So that connection, that's to me the best competitive advantage there is, Rich, is when a team comes together and they have communication and moments and ways that they connect. And so this is a group that is connected, certainly a wide receiver, and now adding Hayden into our tight end core. Mm-hmm. And that's at the front and center of that for sure.
Yeah, and then the one with maybe the largest chip could be Gurley and Todd coming in. And man, we keep on asking this question out here in Los Angeles. I'm going to ask it to you and try and is this young man healthy? Is his knee ready to roll in the National Football League? Dan Quinn.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way to us, Rich. He's answered and delivered on all the practice moments, the conditioning, is in shape, all the stuff that he's just like everybody else, going through it. And he's bigger than I thought. So no wonder he's got so many touchdowns down the red zone. This is a big dude who can catch the ball out of the backfield. But I really am enjoying getting to know him, just like we are with all the teammates. But for the newer guys, how do they find their own way? And one day, connecting with linebackers and DBs. And I said, has that always been the case? He said, yeah, all the way back from high school. I always had a good relationship with the defensive side. And so you see a guy building a relationship on a team, not just on the offensive side, but all across. And that's certainly the case with Julio and Matt and some of the other team leaders here as well. So I've been very impressed by what I've seen so far with Todd.
And I preface this question, I swear I'm not asking this about fantasy football whatsoever. But, it is because it does give you a window of what you're expecting here. What about touches for Todd Gurley? What are you hoping is the sweet spot of touches for Todd Gurley in your offense, Dan Quinn?
We haven't gone down that space as much as just we've got to make sure we have like a complementary and a balanced attack, Rich, because that's when we're at our best. It's run game, it's play pass, and so there'll be some games that will have more just based on the scheme that we're playing, but it should always be a healthy dose for us, just because for us balance is going to be a big part of what we do. Our run and play passes, that's where so many explosive passes come from. So, but we're certainly not heading into our season with any limitations in that space regarding Todd, because he's hitting all the marks here. He worked incredibly hard, back in LA and during the off season. And you can definitely see he put that work in, out on the practice field.
And then finally on your defense, I couldn't help but notice Tat McKinley saying that it kind of shocked him, made him kind of a little bit more aware of the realities by not getting his option picked up for his fifth year. This young man that's important to your team. What does that mean to hear that from this kid that's right up there up front for you? Dan.
Yeah, and for sure, it's not, all these situations, not one size fits all. So one of the things I've been impressed by him, he had to go through a shoulder surgery during the off season, and in conjunction with that, changing his diet, his nutrition. So for him to come back lighter than he's been in a long time, the speed part of his game was something that is one of his strengths. We said, let's make sure that you're light enough that always shows up. And so he's another guy that I thought really put in good work. We wanted to, when the pandemic kind of hit, we had a vision to say, would we be able to come out stronger than we went into it? And a lot of individual planning for the players went into it. They took it really seriously. They had all of April, all of May, all of June devoted mostly to their skill work, their strength, their conditioning, rehab, and tax case. So a number of them came into camp stronger and, more, mentality that had been even, come stronger than in years past. So that part, it made getting into training camp a lot of fun to get started.
Last one for you. I asked this of Bill Belichick yesterday, Coach. I'll ask you as well. If you could wave a wand and change a rule in the rule book, the Dan Quinn rule would be what? What would you change in the NFL?
Man, that's a good one. I think if I had to, I prefer the PI for the college side of things. Sometimes I think the 40-yard penalty down the field, that's an expensive one, certainly as a defensive coach. But, I'd say that'd be one that's the first one that popped into my head, so I'm going with that.
Would you like to know what Belichick said? Are you curious?
Yeah, I would.
The same thing.
Did he really? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
well, he said
we recognize the pain of it.
Yeah. Well, he said that he wants everyone to take a look at it. He wants consistency between the college and the pro game. He said if the college game changes to the pros, okay, but if the pros got to change to the college, he would prefer to take a look at it. But that's the same thing he said. The same thing.
It's a big one, for like a personal foul or an unnecessary roughness or unsportsmanlike.
Right.
It's less than a big PI. But, hey, it's all part of the competitiveness that makes it good, and we're going. But, yep, I'm glad. I think if you asked all the coaches, some of the defensive ones, I don't think any of the offensive coaches would say that.
Yeah, just say tee it and let it fly. Oh, yeah. Man. Coach, thanks for the time. Always appreciate our chats. Really do.
All right,
thanks
likewise,
for the call.
Rich.
Right back at you. You got it. That's Dan Quinn, Atlanta Falcons head coach.
How about that?
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.